Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so I watched this most recent appearance of Tim Dillon on Joe Rogan's podcast. I'd seen some clips going around about them talking about Palantir, so I thought that might be interesting. And I couldn't get very far into this interview, I have to say. You know, I heard a lot of hype about this episode, and it seems like whatever audience is still there for the Joe Rogans and Tim Dillons, which is still quite a large audience, to be clear, but they lost some credibility with some people. And it's never been more clear to me watching this how much these guys just traffic in conspiracy bullshit. It's like, this is what they do. This is them in their element, particularly Tim Dillon. I don't think Tim Dillon does anything aside from that. Joe Rogan talks to different kinds of people and he does like sports commentary and stuff, but really he's in his element when he's doing this conspiracy theorizing. And nowadays it always has anything from like a conservative slant to a far right slant. And that's what you see from these two guys. They're just tossing right-wing talking points back and forth to each other. And, you know, there's no accountability at all. They don't feel even an inclination to not contradict themselves, make sure they're saying things that are true, making sure they're not laundering narratives for other people uncritically. You just don't see any of that from these guys. They are just throwing things out there, and that's ultimately where the profit comes for them. Is, you know, it's stimulating. People like to listen to that because it stimulates your mind. Doesn't really have that much of a connection to like concrete politics or like real things that can be proven or just read about, and instead it's usually pretty lofty stuff, or whatever information there is to read about it is from weird sources and stuff. And people like that. And so not only does it attract a lot of viewership, but there's a lot of room for profiteering within that as well. Like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin are an example of, you know, by taking this sort of anti-establishment, well, maybe there are other treatments for COVID. Maybe there's some possibilities out there that the FDA doesn't want us to know. And so it creates a certain level of opportunity within that realm. And that's just where Joe Rogan and Tim Dillon thrive. They can just throw this shit out there and they don't necessarily care or understand why the bag just gets bigger and bigger, but it does. So the main thing, I want to highlight two specific things. First of all, Tim Dillon mentions this show that he's going to do in Saudi Arabia, which a lot of comedians are doing. Bill Burr is on this show as well. It's a weird fucking thing to do. They're getting offered a boatload of money. Some comedians turned it down, some didn't. So Tim Dillon defends his decision to do this Saudi Arabian comedy festival, I believe like for royalty, or at least for elites in Saudi Arabian society. And I think it's very telling where he goes in his defense of this. He immediately pivots to a talking point to a degree that I think enough of their audience is conditioned enough that they're not going to catch this, but it really is impressive, the maneuver that he does. So let me play this real quick, and then I'll get to another clip in a second. I'll try to show you guys a couple clips without making this a 30-minute long video, but we'll see.
Are you really going to go there?
Of course I am.
Wow.
Why would I not? Would they kill gay people and women? By the way, we've said that about, we say this about every Muslim country is throwing gay people off the roof all the time, by the way, okay? I obviously don't agree with Saudi Arabian policies on women and things like that.
Yeah.
Is it my business to tell Saudi Arabia how to live? Truly.
How big was the check?
$375,000 for one show.
Nice.
That's not bad.
That's pretty good.
That's not bad.
I'll take that.
I'll watch a behanding for that.
Behanding?
Yeah, it's called a behanding. What happens is they cut the hand off the thief.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Steal.
All the people that have yelled at me for this are also pro letting migrants and refugees into America at very high numbers. Now, the same religion that is supposedly so terrifying that I cannot spend 24 hours in that country is the same religion that all of these migrants and refugees are pretty supportive of that are coming over.
Yeah.
So it feels weird to me that people are getting on a moral high horse and going, it is so dangerous to go to Saudi Arabia for 48 hours. Why? Well, because they do X, Y, and Z. Why do they do that? Well, they're this religion is crazy. I go, okay, but then who's coming into our country? How differently do they feel?
So I just find that pretty impressive, the way he immediately pivots into a racist talking point there. I mean, Tim Dillon is really a political animal. This guy is made to do politics, more so than Joe Rogan. I would not be surprised if Tim Dillon runs for office at some point. I don't know if he's talked about that. I get that like doesn't seem like what he wants to do, but that was a very, very political thing that he just did. Because, first of all, he says that the people that are saying he shouldn't do this Saudi Arabian comedy festival are saying that because they are against the Islamic religion. So he's conflating a few things here. He's saying that the reason that it's bad to do a comedy show in Saudi Arabia is because of the religion, not the authoritarian, monarchical nature of their society, which is obviously the thing that most people object to about Saudi Arabia. And you can get into the relationship between the Islamic religion and the style of authoritarianism in Saudi Arabia, but that is not, people aren't saying the religion is bad and that's why you shouldn't perform in Saudi Arabia. You are performing for an event that benefits a country that is essentially a dictatorship, a theocratic dictatorship. That's the problem. So he totally sidesteps that, fully sidesteps that, and goes to replacement theory and the fact that we're bringing all these radical Muslims into our country, and that is eventually going to change the makeup of our country to be a radical Muslim country. And he says that the people criticizing him for doing a show in Saudi Arabia are not the ones who are concerned about that. But I would argue if people are saying to him he shouldn't be performing in Saudi Arabia because they're Muslim and being Muslim is bad, that's your racist fans that also believe the same replacement theory as you. That's the same exact logic as your replacement theory. And by that logic, you also should not be helping to prop up the dictatorship there in any way. But if your concern is that future generations of people are going to be changed in ways that introduce non-democratic, illiberal ideas into our society that cause people to be denigrated, mistreated, etc. What you're concerned about, even if I'll accept this framing about like the Western ideas, okay? I don't really believe in that, but for the sake of argument, if that's what you're concerned about propping up, what you should be focused on is institutions. The institutions that are going to prevent the type of essentially authoritarian rot. If I'm going to take you in good faith and not assume what you're saying is racist, which it is, and it's pretty clear that Tim Dillon is being racist here, but to anybody who is feeling like what he's saying makes sense, the problem that would lead to the downfall of our sort of Western liberal democracy is lack of education, lack of understanding of democracy, lack of a secular approach to politics. So that is what is being degraded currently, right now, in our society. Every institution that is going to prevent any group of people from turning America into some kind of dictatorship is being degraded by the Trump administration on purpose. The Department of Education, the CDC, and entities that are responsible for tracking the health of Americans and widespread diseases and that sort of thing. That's the stuff that keeps the country together. And so if you're concerned that the form of democracy and the form of society that has been created by Judeo-Christian values is under assault, the weakening and the consolidation of those structures into a more authoritarian power structure, which is clearly and obviously what Trump is doing, is going to make that problem worse, no matter who is the one who is trying to degrade society. I should be clear, clearly, obviously, white Christian nationalists are the ones that are degrading our society at this point. It's not brown people or Muslims from any other country. But my point is that if you're really concerned about the institutions of America being degraded, which you're not, what you would be focused on is preserving those institutions instead of, using the power of the presidency to lean on them to erase history about slavery, race relations. That is how you are pushing us towards a society that does not reflect the democratic ideal of society. So they get to Peter Thiel here, and I just thought this was a perfect full circle moment. So I'll just play this real quick and then we'll wrap it up.
But with tech, the level of power in terms of surveillance and data mining and the power over your life has never been as Orwellian as it is now. And it, even with AI and all of these models, it's even going to get more intrusive.
Yeah.
So I think it's not only these great fortunes, but it's their capability to literally be gods, to literally know what you're thinking, what you fear, what you want, your desires, all of these things, having all your data, knowing everything you do, knowing how fast your heart is beating. You know, all these wearable things that you have that are transmitting frequencies to, you know, someplace where all of your health data is being stored. That's what bothers a lot of people. It's what bothers people about this Palantir thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
The Palantir thing is very odd.
A lot of people feel that this is the precursor to a, you know, a social credit score, a digital kind of police state, and that it's being done under the guise of security, that you will be safer.
Which is what the Patriot Act was brought through
That's
with.
exactly right.
It's always the case. It's always the case. They always sneak it in like, you got to be safe.
Yeah.
And then you get the Benjamin Franklin quote.
The people that want security, right? They something about they deserve neither.
Yeah.
They trade liberty for security. Deserve neither. Yeah, I mean it's true.
Yeah, so here is the selling point of Tim Dillon, okay? Tim Dillon understands authoritarian creep. He understands the technocratic fascism that we're all up against. And added points, he's not a lame liberal, so what he's saying is cool. So he's based and he's gay at the same time, but he also understands that the tech guys are fascist, theocratic fascists, and they're trying to pull some kind of trick on us, and they're pulling the wool over all of our eyes. So he understands that. He's trying to figure it out. He's trying to work it out, right? And he says this thing about Palantir, social credit scores, how they're sort of expanding their surveillance powers to intrude on people's lives and to create essentially a structure of American life that is restricted and constantly surveilled. And Joe Rogan mentions the Patriot Act and how the Patriot Act was slipped to us, right? It was given to us under the premise, under the guise that this was what was needed to be done for security for our country. So, Palantir, what is the basis under which they are being contracted by the government to create data systems and ways to consolidate the data of the entire country and other countries as well? It is exactly the same premise that Tim Dillon was rationalizing and theorizing earlier about how we're letting all of these Muslims and all of these immigrants into our country, and it's fundamentally changing the makeup, the ideological and genetic makeup of our country. That is the basis on which databases, that's kind of a cool rhyme actually, I'm going to have to use that. That is the basis under which Palantir is consolidating information on all Americans. That's the trick. You fell for the trick. You don't get to be the shrewd guy who's with your magnifying glass, who's sussing out the fascism. I see what you're doing, technocratic fascist. You bought the lie. You are still laundering the same lie that is allowing them to do that. And Joe Rogan even references the Patriot Act, which was done as a response to 9/11, under the same premise that we are all under threat by this radical ideological Islamic terrorism. Has nothing to do with American policy abroad, has nothing to do with the dynamic of these Western politics and ideologies that we uphold so much, and these other third world countries that we are constantly bombing to death. Has nothing to do with that, and it's all about the fact that radical Islamic terrorists, they're coming here, they're coming for you, they hate your freedom, they hate freedom. That's why they come to America. We have too much freedom here, and they want less. They want to come here and make there be less freedom. And so they're kind of simultaneously pacifying, placating their audience with this thing about, well, if you would give up your liberty for security, then you deserve neither, while literally making the case for why people are going to happily accept their freedoms being infringed upon, because they thoroughly believe that we are being invaded by hostile illegal immigrants. It's not true. It's a lie, and it is the lie. It is the lie that is going to sleepwalk us into fascism. And these guys are going to continue rationalizing it the entire way. They're never going to stop. And so, because that's just what they do, that's where their bread is buttered, and they like it. I think they just like it. This is stimulating for them. They like existing in a world where nothing they say has to matter, and they can just kind of contradict themselves endlessly and never say that they were wrong, move the goalpost, and they will definitely not take responsibility for anything they've said as things get worse.